Greetings viewers, EricTheCarGuy back with another episode of the Fairmont project final installation. This will be episode 4. And no, yes, it's a long road before we get there, but at the end of all this work, this car ends up in Hot Rod magazine. Anyhow, in this episode, I will be installing that nice, pretty engine that you saw in the last episode. I will also be installing a stabilizer relocation kit, stabilizer bar relocation kit for the front. I had to lower it and move it forward. I explain more about that in the video, but also you get to see the stance of the Fairmont for the first time after all the new suspension upgrades. So after the coilovers, after all the stuff in the rear with the torque arm, the panel hard bar, all that stuff, this is the first time it's on the ground with the weight of the engine in it, so you get a chance to see, how the car sits for the first time. That's kind of exciting. Along with some other things that are thrown in there, which, well, you'll see in the video, which we should get to right now. So here's a close-up of what I did yesterday. Got that all ground down. Same over here. Everything's all painted, it's dry now. My intercooler brackets are all dry and ready to be installed. I'm going to start by reinstalling the transmission crossmember. Cannot wait till you go away, Mr. Speedo Cable. You're not my friend. Let's get you in this car. Get in my belly. Oh, excuse me. There's Mr. Speedo Cable. How are ya? Well, it's in there. Oh, it looks so good in there. Like, so good in there. I am a little concerned about the proximity of that power steering rack to that header pipe. We're going to have to deal with that. Outside of that, however, looks like the steering shaft and everything is fine, especially with my backwards exhaust. That seems to be very helpful in this situation. Can't get through a day without dropping at least one thing. I was concerned about this. The lines for the power steering interfering with getting the nut on this engine mount. I think I'll start with the other side, lift it up a little bit, and then slide the nut on while it's still threaded through the mount, and then drop it down. You know what? These washers have always been just a little bit too tight on those studs. Therefore, I'm going to open these up ever so slightly. That'll function just fine. Just a couple millimeters is all I'm doing. Just opening it up just a little bit. Because these bits are tapered, it's good to go in from both sides like this. It'll just allow it to slip over those threads a little bit easier, which I'm having some difficulty doing. Oh, that's much better. Before, what was happening is I was running the nut up onto the stud. The washer would get caught on the threads and and lock it into place. Kind of sucked. Now, it doesn't do that anymore. Yeah, that trick with the washers helped immensely. Now that I'm sure the engine won't go anywhere, I'm going to drop it all the way down in and install the transmission so that I can make sure everything is still leveled up before I tighten the mounts down. Also, I want to support the rear of the engine. I don't like it hanging on the mounts like this. I do like my removable hook. That was one killer upgrade. Well, I'm sad to report it looks like my drain plug might still be leaking. Darn it. She seems to be living in her new home nicely. Although, like I said, I'm gonna have to move that clamp. That's what I'm gonna have to do, just reposition it so that it's not sitting right on top of that rubber boot. You can sort of get a better idea of what I was dealing with the lines for the power steering and that engine mount bolt or nut. I couldn't get the washer past that line, so I had to slip that nut on ahead of time. It doesn't look like it's going to interfere with anything else. If it does, I'll move it again, but for now, I'm leaving it there. Let's get this thing up in here, shall we? There we are. Ah, that's what I like. Solid engagement. I heard you. We'll torque them to 40 foot-pounds. Now for the Crossmember, it'd be really great if you put it on correctly, Eric. I mean, it would be really great. It doesn't work as well when you put it on backwards. Can't get through it without dropping at least one thing. Doesn't look like those holes are lining up at all. Yeah, somewhere in here, the transmission got off a little bit. So I just need to probably loosen the fasteners to the mount, move the mount around a little, and then I'll do the rest with the transmission. Not super fond of doing this, but gotta do what you gotta do sometimes. A lot of emergency vehicles today, right? I hope they're okay. Get the right size socket, Eric. Yeah, I do still have that polyurethane bushing in there. And I'm gonna run it for now. And one of the main reasons is because I have it. You know, it's like one of those bird in hand kind of things. I've spent plenty of money on this project. If I can save a little bit for now and not have to buy a new transmission mount, I will take full advantage of that. As far as clearance goes under here, I really like the new routing of my hose and my clamp. That seems to have worked out really well. It's routed very nicely. And there doesn't seem to be any interference with the power steering rack at all, which is good. And I got plenty of room here. It's close, yes, but not so close that I feel like I really need to worry about it. But this is the engine in the car and the transmission, so this is the angle and everything that everything will be at. But so far I don't see anything underneath that gives me any real cause for concern. It's bang on level still. It's supposed to be at 50 foot-pounds, but I can't see how I'm getting a 55 or something. Can't see how I'm getting a torque wrench in here. Should make it a little easier to get in there. Yeah. That power steering line sucks. Hopefully that stays put. Now I know the wheels are moved forward, and that's by design, but I just want to kind of check the ride height and the stance. And I also may have to clearance the front fenders a bit to accommodate the steering radius of the tires and wheels. Oh yeah, that's a little low. It's a little low, but it's kind of awesome. I do need to bring it up a bit though. Yeah, all the weight is on the ground now. And it is pretty low. This side seems a little bit better. But I'm gonna turn the wheels lock to lock and check what I'm hitting here. I have a plan in case it does. But that's kind of a killer stance, I think. But I do think it needs to come up a tad. That's a little too low. Let's see if we can get the air filter sorted out going through here, just for starters, and we'll worry about the other stuff here in a minute. This is the first leg of our journey, and that lines up with everything there. And I may need to, well, I probably will go inside of this hole with a grinder a little bit, especially on these edges here. But for now, let's just see if we can get it fitted. I've got a short piece that goes into here. I'm just going to see if that will accommodate the filter as well. So here's my filter. That'll go up through the inside there, but this we can just add here. That should be enough there. Yeah, for both of these. We'll have to make the hole slightly larger. Got my die grinder, my new Astro die grinder. It's kind of fancy. Anyway, might as well clean this one up while I'm here also. Looks a little more presentable. And first, let's check the fitment. Yeah, I'll go through there. Fine. There's a lot of metal shavings down here. I'm just going to vacuum those up real quick before I continue. Let's try this again. I suppose I should also take the clamp and put on the outside of this. I got the air filter from the same company that I got the turbo kit from. See with this clamp on here, I'm not sure this will go through. So we shall see. Okay, with the clamp, it does need to open up a little more. Let's just see if this is the right connection for this. So one of two things needs to happen. This hole needs to get bigger, or I need to use the other piece of pipe and not this short piece here. I'm gonna get my face shield, just cause. Carefully take these metal shavings away. Let's see if we can make this work now. It's just not enough. Just a couple more inches, right? We're gonna have to custom make a piece for this. I suppose we could check this fitment just to make sure that this will achieve the goal. And honestly, I like this metal going through over just the air filter. Yeah, that'll work fine. We just need to figure out where to cut it. I'm happy with that part. I just need to figure out the length. And then I need to get the air filter onto it. And then hope, I don't think I'm going to interfere with my other intercooler pipe, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. So right now, I'm just going to go in through this hole and my marker and mark right here. I want to make sure that this is actually in there enough for a clamp. A little bit of silicone spray works really good at bringing these pieces together. That seems like good engagement there. I'm in a good 1.5 inches, almost 2 inches. Try it again. Got to make sure I've got good engagement on the air filter also. There's my mark. So I'm going for this general area. I've taken a piece of tape and marked the line that I want to cut. Experience has taught me this is the best way to go. The waste is what's in the vise. What I'm keeping is what's out here. So don't get your pennies in a bunch thinking I'm ruining it, because I'm not. Gonna take this over to my grinder and wire wheel and clean it up, get rid of the slag. Also, I'm gonna put a rough surface here. I found that works just fine for retaining the hoses. I mean, the lip is great, but just roughing up the surface, this is just aluminum. Roughing up the surface seems to give it enough grip with the clamp to hold it in place. And remember, this is on the intake side, so I'm not holding back any pressure here. Cool, right? I'm gonna take the non-pretty end and put it inside the filter. Yeah, this might not be the way. I may have to do it the other way, so I may, yeah. Which sucks because I'll have to tighten this on the other side of the fender. Now we are under the vehicle. Yeah, this is gonna make air filter changes so much fun. I think I got an idea to sort of soften the lower lip of that so it's not resting directly on the metal. Also, I'm thinking what you might be thinking, a splash shield in this area might be in order. I'm thinking something that sort of fills in this area here, that has maybe a couple of holes in the bottom for drainage. But that also depends on, I'll probably be modifying this inner fender too, because the tire is coming awfully close. In fact, I believe it's coming into contact, so I need to sort that as well. But there's the air filter. I had another idea. Got a slightly longer piece of hose here. So before I put the clamps on, I have a thought. Now, I have a fully shielded and protected hole. You're like, Eric, you cut an ugly hole. Well, guess what I just did? Yes, it still has the lettering on the outside, but I don't know, kind of like it. Let's get this hose back on with some clamps. That looks good, that looks good. I get the feeling that the upper radiator hose is gonna go right over this fastener. So I'm gonna flip it around. Ta-da! Where to go next? You know what, I'm gonna work down below, but just this whole time I'm getting this hooked up, I'm thinking about the routing of the cold side, how I'd said in an earlier episode how I was going to change it over. But these breather filters right here change everything. They really do. Because I was going to mount my fuel pressure regulator, which is this guy right here, boost regulated. I'm not necessarily going to use this mount, but it was going to go here. It can't go up here on the firewall. And that's because you're not supposed to have anything in line with where the flywheel is in case it lets loose and it hits the fuel system. So I believe, and I don't think I can put it here, like what would be darn convenient if I could. So I'm gonna have to mount it over here, but also my ignition coil is gonna live over here. So with all that stuff living in this neighborhood, it makes the space that I have for a tube to go through here smaller and smaller. But I'm going to think on it while I work on the stabilizer bar and the stabilizer bar relocation kit, because Apparently I'm going to have to move the stabilizer bar forward because I have moved the control arms forward and also lowered the vehicle. I might have just solved the problem. Look at that. That fits in there like perfect. This might be just what I need. I mean, exactly what I need. Look how well that bends around there. Yeah, look at this. I mean, wow. So that might solve all the problems right there. So just need to come straight out of here, maybe a 90 there, and then I'm up at the carburetor. Let's get that stabilizer bar sorted out because I know I'm going to have to fit some of those parts. Here's my stabilizer bar relocation kit. Well, the attachment points to the body, and this will help move all this forward. These need to attach to here. These are what attaches to the car. So this is what's on the car. Then this attaches to here. Then stabilizer bar attaches like this. So what was once in one location, which is like this, gives me the choice of two locations. So it drops it down and I can either have it there, have it on that set or that set, depending upon how this fits up in there. But I know for a fact one of these is going to interfere with where I've mounted the oil filter, and I'm going to have to cut a corner off of one. So I'll get these sorted. But the way these work is these have to bolt from the inside like that before they attach to here. These may not necessarily be removable on your vehicle. They were on mine, and I'm grateful for that because it allows me to take the engine in and out with a turbo and everything attached. However, these are the bolts that are going to need to pass through here to this block. That's never going to happen the way this is, and plus these are threaded. So what I need to do is I need to drill these out. I'm still going to have to come in here with a die grinder or something and get rid of that little bit that's left over, but it seems to work. I might have had a better idea, just a universal bit. It's got a little bit of slop in there now, and I don't want too much slop. That will be amazing. Amazing. Less drilling, I think, made this one a little better. Well, I marked these when I remove them, and this is the right side. So that means this will bolt up in there like this, and this, I want my adjustments facing forward like that. So it's got to attach like that for the right side one. To do this, you have to insert the quote-unquote nut plates ahead of time. Preferably like this, sort of staggered, because apparently once you get one of them in there, they're not going to be able to move anymore. I'm just following what the instructions said. They said I shouldn't be able to do this now. But I am. Silly instructions. What do they know? This moves it forward like 0.6, that first set of holes, and this is like 1.1 or something. So a little more than an inch this moves it forward. And since my control arms are moved forward, I need to go here. But basically when all is said and done, you want the stabilizer link to be straight up and down, as vertical as possible in the control arm when the suspension is down on the ground. That's what you want. So you want a straight up and down vertical on that. This is the left side, so when this attaches to the vehicle, it's in there like so. So towards the front like that. Once you get that first one started, it's a little bit easier to get the second one going. All ready for action. This is where this is going to live. I'm just going to attach this lower fastener for the moment. It's temporarily there while I position the oil filter where it's supposed to go. supposed to be right there, and I do have a fitment issue. Uh-oh. I just discovered another fitment issue for the oil filter, and that is with the bottom of the power steering pump. So no matter what, I need to move this oil filter. Still gonna have to cut off that corner because it's hitting right there. So I'll just basically cut that whole corner off of there. But this is no bueno. And I'd love to move it further up here. But the thing is there's that bulge in the frame rail. So I'd have to flatten that out. Am I able to flatten that out? It's not looking promising. Maybe a better question is going to be, how am I going to drill these holes once I have this in position? It looks like one of these holes will still work. Therefore, I'm going to install this one. That way I can mark the other two and sort of get a feel for how this is all going down. But if I tighten that down, those hoses come into contact, but I can move them. That will barely miss. Like, so stinking close. And I'm thinking I can, with a couple of washers, make the rest of this work. Today's a day where I'm really glad that I bought the angle drill. These screws are self-tapping. I had a passing thought of grinding that down. It's passing though. It's an awful lot of junk to be thrown around in my new engine compartment, although it is sealed up. The carburetor hole's sealed up, and now I have an air filter. This might be a job for a wrench man. That's pretty solid. I'm gonna drop it down so I can mark that other hole. Now you can probably see that there is a gap there, which, as I said, I believe I can take up with a couple of washers is what I'll end up doing. I found these lock washers, which are kind of thick, and I think they'll work perfectly because they're about the right thickness. Also, they're lock washers, so there's some spring tension here that I like. That feels solid, very solid. Like I could lift the car with it solid. This is lock washers. They seem to take up the space nicely. And there's just enough clearance. Call that a success. And there's plenty of clearance for the stabilizer bar, so I no longer have to be concerned about that. All right, so here's something cool about going back into these Fairmont videos after the car is already complete. I know the problems that come ahead. And as far as this divorced oil filter that I just showed you, that I spent a whole bunch of time trying to mount and fix and all that kind of stuff, complete and utter waste of time. That thing is garbage. Do not use those. Just forget about those things altogether. They habitually leak. Mine, both of those hoses came off of it, caused massive oil leaks and possibly some engine damage. It's just no good. There's a much better option if you need to relocate your oil filter. I had to relocate mine because the exhaust came down right into where the oil filter was because of the turbo. But I've got a much better setup now. It's just a 90-degree fitting, fit right on the side of the engine, saved a whole bunch of time and hassle, and hasn't leaked once. So that will be linked in the description. Don't use what you saw here in this video. Now that we've sorted that, let's attach this for real now on both sides and see if we can fish the stabilizer bar up in here. Although, it occurs to me with the stabilizer bar in here, it's going to be fairly difficult to do the power steering lines. I might try and install those lines just so that I have an idea of where they go before I commit to the stabilizer bar. This just wants to be all over this exhaust pipe. I don't like that routing at all. Hey, that's promising. That'll do, donkey. That'll do. Before I tighten this all the way down, I'm thinking I should probably check to see if the O-ring is there. It's there. And it does have a little bit of fluid in it, but I'm just gonna add a touch more and some automatic transmission fluid. It's just easy to grab. That's disconcerting, because that doesn't feel like it's tightening down at all. Well, I checked with the wisdom of the internet, and apparently the hose, even though it's tight, will still have looseness or play in it. So you just have to make sure you have the new O-rings in there. But this one is tightened down on the rack, but apparently it will be loose even though it's tight. So it's very dependent on that O-ring. Looks like it's the same deal on the back of the pump. It's tight, but it does not lock the line down. I'm gonna have to find some kind of bracket or something that I can tie this thing up with. It just seems weird that, you know, the high pressure line fits so loose. I'm gonna get this low pressure line started. The other end is gonna go to the cooler. I don't have that hooked up yet, but at least this will be connected to the rack. And I did the high pressure one first because it was harder to get a wrench on. But this K-member makes life so much easier to get up in here on this rack. I bet if this was a stock K-member, this would be nearly impossible to access. Same deal with this one. Tightens down, but feels loose. There's some power steering lines that just need to be tied up. So this one's gonna go to a power steering cooler, and the other one going to the back of the pump. And like I said, they're tight, but they fit loose. Hopefully I don't have power steering fluid spraying on everywhere when it first started up. Okay, Ford power steering lines. I learned something that day, well not that day, later on when I first started it up and they leaked. Those O-rings are the thing that seals it, and they do fit loose. Don't over tighten them, because that's what I did and I ruined those O-rings, and they're Teflon O-rings and they're not exactly easy to get back on there, but I believe I cover that in a future video. But the point is those power steering lines will fit loose like that. That's how they are. Don't over tighten them. A little bit of transmission fluid on the O-ring before you install it, and that should be fine from there. Back to getting this stabilizer bar in. I want to round that corner off, because when that's tightened up, that is going to seriously chafe against that hose. It's also pushing it out of position that I spent so much time to get it into. Here I am thinking I was going to fit the other side, and it's looking like I'm going to be doing this side. So that's the part that I think I'm going to remove. Clearance, Clarence! I'm going to take it over to the grinder and finish it up, clean it, round it, make it pretty. Now let's go see if it worked. It could stand to be a little better. I mean, it's okay. It doesn't move it nearly as much as it did. I just like to see a little better. Let's give that a try. That seems to disturb it the least. Would I like it to be better? Yes. But would I like my stabilizer bar to stay on the car? Also yes. Remember, this guy broke and I had to replace it, and drill and tap and all of that. Not going anywhere. And the protective covering that I have on my hose will help keep it from chafing. There's something inside this frame rail that's broken loose. Not cool. What is your damage, Heather? Yeah, one last idea here. I borrowed the new bolt from the other side. Cleanest, freshest threads. And it's just falling right through. All right, I think it's time to be done. Well, this concludes episode 4 of the Fairmont project final assembly. And yes, we have a lot more to go, but that's how a car like this gets built. It gets built a little bit at a time. You got to hang in there. You got to have some mental toughness to stick with it. But just know that this car in particular is going to end up in hot rod. Well, if you stick with it, who knows how far you'll be able to go. But you'll be able to realize that dream that you had before you got started. So hang in there. There is an extended version of this video available to premium members of my website. I'll put a link to that down in the description and more information on how you can get one of those memberships. I'll also put links in the description to parts and other information that will be useful that pertains to this video. If you have automotive questions not covered in this video, I ask that you head to EricTheCarGuy.com. Tons of information there to help you. Please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, do all those things that help me make a living. I really appreciate you watching. Thank you so very much. Be safe, have fun, stay dirty, and I will see you next time.